thanks to the two of you for coming. We were hoping for more, but you know what, it's fine. It's still nice to connect with people in a different way. Ryan and I were just talking about this is a new kind of thing for us, new thing for me, and we're just looking for different ways to connect with people. And it seems like people are kind of used to doing the webinar thing, so we thought we'd try it out. So this is the first in the series. There's going to be 4 of them, and they're all educator focused. Today, I thought we'd just go over some of the school programs that we have available, and then the next 3 will be more kind of topical, and I'll give you a heads up on those, remind you of them, but you would have gotten the email about them too. Ryan is here because he's super helpful, frankly.
Let's hope.
He was the Canadian or the school contact for Canadian schools kind of in the West here, or the East, and then there was another one of our colleagues who was doing the Western schools, but he has now transitioned to spend his time exclusively on donors, and I've been able to take up some of his jobs. So he was doing, it takes me an entire time to do what he was doing in half his time, so.
That's a bold lie, so.
So since there's only 2 of you, if you have any questions, you can feel free to just interrupt me or throw it in the chat or whatnot. So I have a unique position that I love because I get to still spend time with teachers and in the classroom, and yet be involved with an organization that I've come to really love and appreciate and believe in what they do as well. So hopefully we can share that a little bit with you through examples of how you can be involved. So I taught for 10 years at the high school level, which both of you know Ruth I used to work with, so she's representing Guido. And so I feel like very close just with teachers, even in the teachers that I've gotten to know in the last couple of months, I just automatically feel like we have a lot in common. So that's been a neat experience as well. And I think we as educators believe in Christ-centered education, and so does EduDeo. So it makes a lot of sense. It's very logical that we would work together. And so we're looking for opportunities for that and want to make sure that everyone is aware of those opportunities and what they all involve. And I remember as a teacher really wanting to have my students exposed to what's going on in the world and have really rich learning experiences and draw in the organizations, and sometimes it's just difficult to know where to start. And so part of my job is to let you know that and to make you more aware of it. So that's, again, what we seek to do today. So before we start with school programs, I'm just going to go over what EduDeo is about, which I'm assuming you know a lot of already, but it's kind of neat to set your brain to where we're coming from as well. And maybe you'll learn something, who knows? So I'm going to share my screen and hope that it works. Are you seeing a PowerPoint? Yeah? Okay. There we go. All right, so that phrase partner with us is not used lightly. We love using that word. And I think it is valuable not just for our partners, partner schools and partner associations, but also with you, the teachers. We're walking alongside each other. Again, part of the beauty of my job is I get to walk along with you in the programs or the assignments or the projects that you're involved in. And that's fun for me to not necessarily be directing it, but to be helping you along with it. So what I love about our logo is it actually tells our story. The different parts of it tell what we're about and why we do what we do. So if you're ever trying to figure out, oh, how do I explain that again? Then you just have to remember the little logo. So our vision, what we hope to see for the future, is every community transformed by the gospel. And we know that we are doing that not in our own strength, but of course in God's strength working through us, because he's the only one that is able to produce that transformation of the heart that we're looking to do through education, but Christ-centered education. So the fish symbol includes that, the Christ-centered part of our vision. Our mission is how we seek to arrive at that. So we're unique. We are set apart from other organizations in that we have a pretty specific role or pretty specific way in which we go about reaching that, spreading the gospel, and that's through education. So education is the key to equipping students, and we know this as educators, we know this, that education is the key to allowing them to be agents of change in their communities. But specifically, it is Christ-centered education because we're changing the heart. We're producing lasting, sweeping change that allows students to know who they are in Christ as well, and not just have the head knowledge, but heart knowledge as well. So in the logo, the pages represent the education piece of it. And then when you put it together, you have Christ-centered education, but you also have a butterfly. And butterflies start out as caterpillars that look really, really different from the butterfly. They go through their own transformation. So it's a really neat metaphor and a neat symbol that represents the transformation that we're looking for producing in our students as well. So together, we have the education plus the gospel is producing transformation. So the way that we do that is we partner with local associations, school associations. So in the boxes are the countries, of course, but either underneath or above, you have an acronym or a name of an association, a local association that we partner with. All of these share our vision, and they're located throughout the world. There's 5 in Central America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and there's 5 in Africa. And we focus on 3 different areas of education. That would be, first of all, the teachers, of course. Partnerships begin with teachers, and of course, the best way to transform an educational system is to start with people who are on the ground, who are doing the work with the students. And so training is one of the biggest things that we do. It's one of the greatest needs of teachers, especially developing countries where they don't have as many resources or opportunities. So we fund teacher training, send volunteer educators to facilitate workshops, provide ways, different teaching methods. I'm actually shocked in things that I've learned from our partners, and I'm learning what they have learned, and we sometimes think that we have something to offer them and it's not necessarily reciprocated, but I'm learning that there's a lot of back and forth that goes on, which has been cool. So that's part of that walking together, which happens to be a program of ours that involves sending volunteers and helping out with these teacher training initiatives. We also, of course, focus on the students themselves. We don't sponsor children like other organizations do, but we do partner with the projects, with the associations, and they're the ones who disperse things like bursaries, different kinds of aids to make sure that no student has barriers that keep them from being in school. And then schools, maybe something that we're more well known for, perhaps, building schools, but we don't actually build them. We maybe do renovations and things like that, but we don't build them from scratch. We partner with schools that are already in existence and seek to help them to grow stronger and to do renovations if need be, but also investing in the people, of course, as well, not just the construction project, but all 3 work together. So I emailed a document out that summarizes what the programs are, but also does a bit of a comparison of them. So we're going to go through all of these programs, and hopefully that document helps to figure out what the differences are. And then the details I'll give you should do that as well. So I'm going to start with the ones that are trips. So that would be International Block, School to School, Hands trips, and then Discover and Learn as an Educator trip. So go through each one, try and make sure that we can understand the difference between the 2, or between the 4 actually. So School to School, International Block, and Hands service trips. The School to School trips, here's some beautiful pictures of some of the students who have participated. The School to School trips focus on finding creative ways to have the visiting students and the local students to interact with each other. And that is not just through building things, it's through relationship building and interacting through different activities and just getting to know each other. And so we want to be really intentional about building those times of interaction into the trip, which is about a week to 2 weeks long. And that could happen through various learning opportunities. It could happen through discussions, simple discussions of just being with each other. There is typically a school construction component to it, but it's not the focus of it. There's also various visits to, there is sometimes visits to places that show different parts of the culture, of course, that maybe would be considered almost touristy, but it's a smaller part of the trip, of course. The main purpose is to build those relationships with the locals. So if we compare that to International Block, which I'll explain next, both of those are a bit longer trips, 7 to 14 days for school to school, but 6 weeks for International Block. Both of them focus on relationship building, cultural and community building experiences, not excluding construction, but not focusing on it. The school to school trip does not give the participating students school credits, but the International Block does. It's quite a bit longer and it counts towards credits. Explain a bit more about that later. And then the hands trip is maybe what most people tend to be familiar with, but that does have a focus on construction projects and is quite a bit shorter than a couple of these other ones. So what I did was, because I actually am not as familiar with these projects or programs because I haven't been involved with them, I asked a few of our participating teachers to answer a few questions and explain what their experiences have been like. So I have 2 from the International Block schools, and what they have to say is often very similar to what the school to school schools also have to say, but I'll show you those 2 interviews here.
Hello, my name is Henry Lammers, and I'm a teacher at London Christian High School. Our relationship probably started about 4 years ago. Our school was investigating creating a course which we now call International Block, which would involve a trip overseas for a longer span of time. We partnered with TDCH, who had been doing something similar with a trip to the Dominican Republic for many years. Then we connected up with EduDeo because with their goal of bringing this treasure of Christian education to other countries and us being involved in Christian education, the fit only seemed logical. I really have so much to say, and even though you won't necessarily get it from my voice or from a short video, thrilled. I'm thrilled with what's happening, and see real value in it for us as Christian schools, for all the partners really, for EduDeo, for the organizations in other countries, for the people in those nations, and for Christians in those countries as well. As far as the course goes that we were involved in, we used a lot of the information from the book When Helping Hurts. Poverty is not like material poverty that many of us think, but it's more broken relationships, and that we all suffer from poverty, and at the same time we're all very rich. It worked out really well with EduDeo because they had the contacts. They worked out the logistics for us, like how would we travel, what would we do in a day, where would we stay, what food would we eat, and also just the connections with principals and teachers and members of the community over there and other organizations. Our views on what is it that we should be doing in these other cultures aligned pretty well with EduDeo. Our students took a course that involved some coursework preparation before they went, and then a 6-week trip. We went to Dominican. Our hope last year was to go to Nicaragua, but with COVID that didn't happen. And again, this year we were planning on going to Nicaragua. We also expanded our involvement with other Christian high schools. If there's other high school teachers listening here and this strikes a chord with you, I would invite you to connect either with Lori or myself. It really changed students, I guess that's what I would say. And for me, a line I use a lot is, this course is not going to be about what are you going to do in your life, it's about who are you going to be. And I think it really helped students kind of put that into focus. And as they, spend time with God, spend time as a group bonding, but also spend time learning about other people and other cultures in an experiential way. They knocked my socks off. I cried when they did presentations, and you're not going to get that from me talking here, but it was truly beautiful. So you might not be getting involved in such a big venture, but I think, with technology these days, connecting online with kids the same age as your kids in another country, doing projects where you learn about a country and then connecting with that country. I'm sure EduDeo has ideas for you. I think these kind of ideas are something that would be great for EduDeo to continue to develop in cooperation with us Christian schools.
He says it much better than I would be able to. We also had the principal of TD Christian do a brief interview as well.
We have had the privilege and opportunity to work with EduDeo and London Christian High in order to run our 1 semester 4-credit program in international block. What we really appreciate about running an international block experience where students take a considerable amount of time in a Central American country is it helps students understand who they are in the landscape of the world and how they can work with other Christians in other places to do God's work. Trips that allow students to go to countries such as Nicaragua and Dominican Republic, Guatemala, are places that help students understand that God's people are everywhere. And the way that we respond to God in different places is different. So in that sense, it's affected our students in the manner of shaping their lives to see themselves as a global citizen rather than a Canadian citizen, as a kingdom citizen, being the kingdom of God rather than just a local church goer. We at TD Christian have learned that partnering with EduDeo and having students at their time in their life when they go there, 16, 17 years old, is truly a way that God can use organizations and people for the furtherance of his kingdom, no matter what age they are. The advice that I would give to you from our experience at Toronto District Christian High School for thinking about how you might work with EduDeo is to allow them to make connections with people who are actually native to the countries that you're going, to allow them to give advice and support and safety. But most importantly, to work alongside them in their countries and in their places to understand how the world is God's world no matter where we are. EduDeo, it's the way to go. Partners can help. It's been great for us. It'll be great for you.
Brought to you by Will Groot. So international block then, based on what they have said, I hopefully you get a bit of an idea of how it's different from school to school. So it's called block because it has connections to Ontario high school courses in it. You take them kind of as a chunk together, as a grouping. So how it's structured is kind of up to you. That's one of those things where you get in contact with me and then we figure out what works with your school. And different models have worked, different schools have been involved. The challenge would be determining how to make sure that students are still able to get credits, even though they're going to be away from the school building for those 6 weeks. But it's totally doable, and students have obviously been changed from it as well. And the last interview for this section is one from my previous school. Rich Tomlin will talk about his experiences on a hands team.
I was a chaperone for the 2018 hands team that was sent from Guido to Brès Christian High School. Ever since being a part of that team, my perspective on how we can impact and how we can be impacted by Christians in other parts of the world has changed, or rather has grown. My understanding of contentment since spending just 1 week in the Dominican Republic has influenced how I interact with my students and staff. I'm able to encourage people to reflect on what they perceive and what they can contribute with a much better understanding than I could before being involved in EduDeo and being involved in hands team. The students who are part of the 2018 hands team have definitely developed an understanding of servanthood. They certainly didn't mind to do the work while they were there, but what was most striking is how they grew to understand that relationships mean so much more than material wealth. Meeting children who are genuinely happy to have an opportunity to go to school, who might not even have basic school supplies, things that we take for granted, affected my students in a permanent way. Realizing how richly blessed we are and how much we can be of help to those in less wealthy areas by helping provide Christian education is something I believe that will stick with these students for the rest of their lives. I don't think that what I have learned is much different than what the students learned. But as a teacher with over 20 years experience, I was amazed at how much my own perspective improved on the responsibility we have to walk alongside other Christians in other parts of the world, especially in the area of education. If I was to give advice to someone who's thinking about partnering with EduDeo, particularly perhaps chaperoning a hands team, I would strongly encourage them to stop thinking and just sign up. It's something you'll never regret. There's a lot of amazing perks. You get to go to neat places in the world, and you most importantly get to meet some really, really great people. You get to see how other Christians live and what blessings they receive from the Lord. And it gives you good perspective. So I definitely would encourage you to not only sign up for yourself, but also for the benefit of those students that want to do it and they need chaperones. So by all means, join the team. Get involved with the organization. It's something you will love and never regret.
And if you want to see a further video that has some footage of hands trips, there's one on YouTube as well. So the difference between hands and the International Block School to School is that hands does focus on the school building and repairs and things like that. And that is super important because often in these regions where we're working, the school functions as a beacon of hope in that community. And so to make sure that all children that are able to can attend and make sure that the facilities are safe and can accommodate all of them is really important. So that no child is ever turned away. So projects are led and they're started, finished by the local community. The hands teams are coming in and partnering along with them and working alongside of them. And the idea is to work towards long-term local sustainability, of course, and having the effect that will last long after the team goes back home. So construction projects include new classrooms, rehabilitating old ones, repairing roofs, playgrounds, adding campus dorms, these kinds of things. So it's a shorter trip with a construction focus. And the last trip then, which Joy can tell you all about, is the Discover and Learn trip. So this one is for educators, and a good teacher, of course, never stops learning. People in general should never stop learning. The Discover and Learn trip is a 10-day professional development opportunity for educators to interact and learn from, encourage other Christian educators in our partner countries. So it's kind of like a class trip, but it's for teachers only. And they get meaningful cultural learning experiences, and they can benefit mutually with other educators across the world. So they get to visit classrooms, interact with the teachers, of course, students, community leaders. They've challenged are challenged in their own awareness, just a few pictures, and appreciation of the larger world in which we live in, just like we want our students to be challenged, and challenged in how they teach, and challenged to change when they go back, perhaps how they conduct their classrooms, and provides lots of professional opportunities to grow, not just on their own, but alongside of some pretty incredible people. I have not been on this trip myself. I was going to hopefully go this past summer. I have been on a similar one, and the experience was amazing. Not something that you'd ever forget, and definitely impacts how you do things here at home. A couple quotes. I don't have any videos from those participants, but a couple quotes. One from Mary Jane: "There's nothing like the uncertainty of a new culture to shift your perspective. I have a much stronger sense of the global community of believers and a clearer sense of my own helplessness and dependence on God. I'm used to the Western ideal of individualism and independence, but the things I saw on this trip are too big, too overwhelming to be handled alone. And they've reminded me that any sense of individual control is totally an illusion." So that, I chose that quote, that comment from her, because we are constantly saying that we all have the same goal for Christian, Christ-centered education. And how cool would it be to be able to go and to interact with them personally? From Michelle, it has reaffirmed, as well as made me in awe of how big our God is. His presence was felt on this trip, and to see how rich these people were in the Lord was humbling. It doesn't make me feel guilty for where I live or how God has blessed us financially. Just gives us more reason to ask the question we often ask ourselves as a family: what are we doing with what God has given us and where he has placed us? So I'm sure those participants were challenged in an amazing way. So those are our trips. I'm going to shift gears slightly to one of the projects that we offer, programs that we offer. And this one's called Right to Hope. So there's something really special that happens when students are able to collaborate together, and when they really come together for a common goal. And it's even more special when they can do that with a classroom that is halfway across the globe. So the Right to Hope project is where students from Canadian Christian schools partner with an EduDeo partner school to write and illustrate a book. And the book explores the theme of true hope. The students are challenged as they explore what it's like in a completely different context, and learn to appreciate the similarities and differences that they have with the partner school children. So EduDeo we coordinate both schools and the writing of it and the illustrating of the book. And typically it's two classes that are basically the same grade level. The class that does the artwork isn't always the same grade level, but that again is very flexible. And then through the book sales, funds are raised that support Christ-centered education. And through the whole project, the participating partner school also gets a set of books. The Canadian school does as well, but it's a gift to the partner school. So there's a couple examples in the pictures there. I think there have been 4 that have been written. Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there have been 4 so far. So the next, the next interview is from the teacher who kind of spearheaded it and is still involved today.
I wanted to do something that was a little bit more connected with that school, that wasn't just about us as a school coming up with a way to make money and then send it to them, where there was something that was collaborative and interactive. And so I started the Right to Hope project, and that is basically just a collaborative writing and illustrating of a book with a class at La Esperanza, our sister schools. It's challenged me to come up with ways to take the curriculum expectations and embed them into a more meaningful, authentic project that connects not only my students in the classroom, but also connects them to students in another part of the world. They're actually now having to do something that's going to be shared with not only these other children, but people who may purchase the book. So you're teaching social studies, but you're actually teaching literacy skills and reading skills and writing skills and oral communication skills. I remember talking to the kids about the idea of how do we bring hope to a broken world, and how do we bless another community. A number of them were coming to the same conclusion that somehow we in North America were going to come up with this way to give money to this particular school, and they wanted the story to be about that, or they wanted the event to be about that. And I really wanted to try to steer them away from this idea of white saviorism and we as the sort of wealthy North Americans are going to fix them and bless them with a monetary thing, and that's kind of the only way that we're going to be able to do that. Once we sort of got past that, they started to get that blessing other people isn't always just about giving them money. That blessing can actually be twofold. That was the big eye-opener. I remember a couple of students kind of really realizing that at the end of that first book that we did. My advice would be to just try something small. Could you write a letter? Could you just send a picture? And get your students involved in the discussion about how you're going to do it. Think about what you are passionate about. As a teacher, we all have things that we really love. Think about what part of your teaching, what's your favorite thing to teach? Because it's going to be easier when it's something that you really love to do, to think of an idea. Go back to your ministry learning expectations and think how can I take this expectation and make it come alive for students? There's lots of ways to take those ministry expectations and things that we have to teach and integrate them into meaningful work. Sometimes people will think, well, now I have to do another thing on top of teach all this stuff, but you don't. You can integrate them together and find ways to take cool ideas and connect it to what the kids actually have to learn.
I like, especially what she said towards the end, that teachers don't need to feel pressure to all of a sudden jump into the international block and have students away for 6 weeks kind of thing. It starts off as these small ideas, small things. So these are just examples. So the annual campaign is kind of like a fundraiser / project, because it can really be whatever you want. The idea is that for school fundraising, so any money that's coming from schools, that it's going towards this one cause. And so what happens is our partners propose needs that they have, and then every year we choose a different focus, a different theme for the campaign based on the requests that were given. So there have been 3 in the past, and we're working on the 4th. The first one was solar panels in Zambia, and the second one was the well project, so wells, also in Zambia, right, Ryan? And then the Pi plan were these little Raspberry Pi computers. Where did they go, Ryan? I forget off the top of my head.
They went to Zambia, the Dominican Republic, and Nicaragua.
Okay, so they were all over the place.
3 of our partners.
Cool. Yeah, so each one of them has been, I wasn't involved in these ones, but the stories that I hear, teachers had all kinds of fun with different ways in which they brought the topic into their class, ways in which they raised money. It just gives a little bit of a direction, and especially when it comes to students raising money, I have found too that when you give them something tangible that they're working towards, and that typically helps them kind of visualize what's going on with the money that they're given, but also the awareness that they're hopefully raising as well. So it could be simply a class presentation that focuses on that certain topic for that year. It could be a fundraiser that you just come up with yourself. It could be a fundraiser that you partner with for other schools, a class assignment that's focused on this topic. it's extremely broad, and that's what I kind of love about it, is that people's creativity can come out in an effort like this. So I'm going to show you a video from Carla, who was instrumental in getting the well project off the ground. And I asked her just to film herself answering questions, and she gave me like this beautiful edited video with all kinds of pictures in it. So gives you a little snippet about who Carla is. Here we go.
Hi, my name's Carla, and I teach grade 7 at Providence Christian School in Dundas. For the past 3 years, my class has partnered with EduDeo Ministries as they've helped to raise money for their annual campaign projects. 2 years ago, my students invited schools across Ontario to join them as they participated in a water walkathon to raise money for wells to be dug at schools in Zambia. Last year, we participated in a 55-hour screen break as we tried to raise money for students in the Dominican Republic so that they could have computers in order to ensure a better future for their learning as well. These projects have become a year-long learning experience for the students in my classroom. At the beginning of the year, my students are given the opportunity to travel to EduDeo Ministries and to meet the staff there and to hear about the work that they're doing to partner with schools across the world in countries that my students often don't think about the learning challenges that are there. When we get back to the classroom after visiting EduDeo Ministries and hearing about the work that they're doing to support schools in other countries, the students are challenged to look at these different countries and some of the challenges that the students there face in their classrooms, whether it has to do with the buildings that they are learning in, whether it's the resources that they have available to them. And then they're challenged to think about how they can make a difference as well. Partnering with EduDeo has given us the opportunity to do that in a really meaningful way and in a way that the students can see tangibly the difference that they are making in the lives of other students, just like them in countries across the world. Partnering with EduDeo Ministries and the work that they're doing in other countries has been a huge blessing for my students these past few years. It's become a part of how we learn, not just something that we tack on to our learning at the end of the year. Being given the opportunity to participate in these projects, to learn more about the countries and the students and the challenges that they face has been immensely rewarding for the students. And not only that, they're given the chance to participate with this organization and to make a difference by something that they are choosing to do. As a teacher, I've learned that when students are part of something, part of a bigger project in their learning, it really changes how they view the curriculum that you're teaching. It gives it life and it brings meaning to their learning, and it motivates them to want to know more and to want to do more.
So I just presented virtually to her class last week, and they are developing some sort of fundraiser, and I think it's probably their plan to get other schools on board as well. So that's an option too. So we'll see what they come up with. So the campaign for this year is a 2-year campaign, and it's called the Education Formula Multiply Her Effect, and it focuses on girls' education. So with school support, we hope to raise, and other support as well, hope to raise $35,000 towards health education in the Dominican Republic, as well as girls' dormitories in Zambia. But I'm not going to give you more information because I'm going to make you come to the second virtual November webinar, which next week it'll be exclusively on the campaign. So you can stay tuned for that. So presentations, of course, we're always open for that. I've done a few already this year. I felt very blessed to be able to do so. We weren't sure what was going to happen with COVID, but I have been able to do that a little bit. This also is very open as far as what happens during a presentation. So I've had teachers who have specific topics they'd like covered. I've had teachers who are a little bit more open to it. There's Ryan with my class at the bottom right there. Last year, I think, 2 years ago. There he is.
For their class, you can see they're all staring at the ground.
No, they loved it. They loved it. They had really good reviews. The top left, so I went back to my previous school at Guido, and they partnered with a Belize school Cornerstone Presbyterian School, high school there, and they did a project with them. They included them in their research, and we were able to have a Zoom call with the leaders. That was really cool. That was a highlight for them. On the bottom left is Carla's class again last week through Zoom. So there's lots of different opportunities here. That I have a list of topics here that I'm kind of already preparing for and are almost ready to go kind of thing. But if you ever have anything else that you think would EduDeo would be able to speak to, that we could have some connections to, then I'm all ears. So for example, the bottom one there, education in the fight against HIV/AIDS, is maybe a bit of a newer one. I have a biology background, so it just made sense for us. But that, yeah, it was really fun to explore that as well. I get to learn as well when we have a request that's a little bit different from what's been done in the past. So entire school, it could be an assembly. I know assemblies are being done differently, but I went to PRC at the beginning of October, and they're doing it where the kids are staying in their own classrooms, and then they have a video conference assembly. So depending on what your school is doing, there's lots of opportunities still there, even with restrictions. And that's when I get to be in classes. So this is one of the most fun parts for me, to keep doing that. EduDeo Go, I'm not going to say too much about it because it's a fundraiser in its infancy still. We haven't really come up with a lot of details. It's going to be modeled like the EduDeo Go fundraiser from a couple of years ago, but this is the school edition. And this is taking the place of the Road to Hope, which will be retiring. And it will be a little bit more versatile in terms of what kind of activities students can be involved in. And we'll also have an awareness raising component where students can come up with different ways to not just be active and raise money per kilometer they run, for example, but also come up with different strategies to raise awareness for the campaign. This one would link into the campaign. So you can stay tuned for that as well. Hopefully we'll launch in the spring, around April or so. And that's not the advertisement, that's an old advertisement. That's all we have right now. And then the Chrysalis, if you got information about Virtual November, you're probably already on the list for the Chrysalis. The first edition went out at the end of September. The second one will come out at the end of November, and there'll be 3 more after that, so 5 total. The ones for this month are going to be focusing on the campaign, really trying to push that, and specifically activities for elementary level. And the purpose of that is so that we can have, I can provide you with ready to use resources that show up in your inbox and hopefully are something that are usable and allow you to have specific ways to integrate EduDeo's work into your classroom. So that about covers the programs and ideas, but there are so many other things. If you ever have an idea or you're not even sure where to go, I've had a couple meetings with teachers already this year, and they kind of say, I want to do something and I'm not really sure what. Here's the unit I want to cover. And we just brainstorm together, and those are some of the best meetings too. We're just not really sure where it's going to go. So feel free to email, just say, I don't know what I want exactly, but let's have a conversation. And just to finish off, I think we're running a little short on time maybe. Just a reminder, the next webinar is exclusively on the education formula and the girls' education topic and focus and more detail on that. And that will be next week at the same time.